Activism, the 2024 election, gun violence, and the Georgia Apalachee high school shooting. We're talking to two amazing young people who have survived gun violence, and they are talking about how they turned this tragedy into activism. And so on this eve of this presidential debate, as you know, everything centers around, personalities, although it should be centered around policies. What as you, Zoe, as you've been watching, all the things that happen, and again, after this Georgia shooting, we've heard all these politicians talking about thoughts and prayers instead of taking meaningful action. What are some of your thoughts about how this nation gets off this merry-go-round, this treadmill of just, going over and over the same tragedies? How do we take constructive action to end gun violence? What would you like to see happen?
I absolutely hate that saying of thoughts and prayers because, let's not go on for 2 hours about that. I think that it's so interesting, and I'm going to bring up something that I also work with March for Our Lives, and whenever I think about what I want to happen, I kind of think about what David Hogg said to me one of the first times that I met him, and at the time, I thought it was so mean. Like, the way that he said it, I thought it was so mean, but I think it's so true, and it's very punctual, but it's so true. And he told us, we were in one of the representative buildings or Senate buildings, and he was saying everybody in this room within the next, 20 or 30 years is going to be dead. And or in this building is going to be dead, and we're going to be the young people that are coming and taking their places, and we need to be able to change things now so we get into these places and these spaces. We don't have so much to do, but that's a start. And so when he told me, I remember at first thinking, that this man is, like, insane. Why is he saying that? Everybody in this room is like, that's so mean. They're going to live to be 150. But it's so true that we're going to be the ones that are coming into these places, and we're going to be the new political leaders, and we're going to be the new representatives and new senators. And I think that whenever we meet and we lobby with some of these senators, a lot of the backlash that we'll get is that we're too young, we don't know what we're doing, we want change, but it's not going to happen. And the amount of change that I've seen young people create just in the past couple of years that I've been in the advocacy space is amazing. So I definitely love to see more of young advocates working together with these state reps and these senators and essentially our lawmakers that are going to make this happen, because there's things that need to take place, like extreme risk protection orders and different gun legislation laws that have to do with raising the age and risk protection laws and all things of that nature that need to take place. And I do think having some kind of bridge where we work together with our reps and that are listening to these young advocates, because so much has gotten done and so much change has happened with us, is very beneficial.
Absolutely. And he told the truth, right? That's one of the things that the Transformative Justice Coalition, everyone, that we always talk about. And that is the fact that in the United States Congress, there's only one person in the House of Representatives who is under the age of 40. Under the age of 35, I should say. And Maxwell Frost is the only representative of the Gen Z generation in Congress. Yet, if you actually had real representation proportionately to the population, there would be 60 young people sitting in those seats. We always remind people that there's a real disconnect between who's sitting in these state legislatures and the U.S. Congress, the House and the Senate, and the people who they represent. So we need to, talk some more about that. And Jaheim, one thing, John, that's really hurt everybody is that one of the most controversial issues coming out of the Apalachee high school shooting has been the recognition that the father purchased the gun, this weapon, this rapid fire weapon as a Christmas present and gave it to the son, even after the police had already visited the home, talked to them, months before about their suspicion that the son was posting all kinds of threats of violence in shootings. What did you think? I mean, when I heard you talking about your friend and that relationship, when you heard about this father, what did you think about, once again, what we ought to be doing to stop this gun violence?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, like when you start trying to address the idea of gun violence, like gun violence is a very complex issue that involves multiple layers. Like you gotta think about like policy, you gotta think about civic engagement, just general education of it, and most importantly, the mental state of the people who actually, purchase firearms. And I will say too, like one of the most impactful things that we as individuals and even communities can take is to simply just advocate for and support the idea of comprehensive gun safety measures. And like in that situation, like a 14-year-old would not have been able to go purchase that weapon himself, but the parents were the ones who purchased it for him. And ultimately, that ultimately what leads to a lot of gun violence, like in my situation with gang-related gun violence, a lot of young people who get their hands on weapons, they get them from their older friends who are legal of age to purchase, or from family members that as he did, like as a gift. And ultimately, there's really no way to stop a young person from getting their hands on a weapon. Like there's no matter what we try to put into place, if a young person wants to go get his hands or her hands on a weapon, then they're going to do it. It is that simple. But what we can do is educate everyone on the policies, on the laws that we do have in place, that we want to put in place, that can lead and still try to prevent harm and prevent future things like this from happening in the future.
And, if you had your magic wand, Zoe, if you had your magic wishes, Ja, what would you want to see happen? I mean, I have, desires and thoughts about what could be done to create a whole different universe out here. What are your thoughts about what could be done?
I'm sorry, it cut out so bad. Can you ask me that one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, the question was, if you had a magic wand or you could get 3 wishes, what would you want to see happen in this area of gun control?
I think for one, I would definitely want to see, not all, but some of the older representatives and senators, like our elected officials, held accountable. I think I'd want to see the age to be able to buy a gun. I'd want to see it raised to 21. I know it is in some states. I know we're having a lot of issues with that right now. That'd be a main one. And I think third is a lot of things that one of the big things that people don't discuss enough is the mental health of students. And I do think that if we are proactive and not reactive, that would be one of the solutions. So the fact that we don't necessarily prioritize mental health for young students, people think a lot of the times that because someone's like a young child, they won't understand mental health or they don't need to get into mental health until they're grown. I don't think that's the case at all. I think if we are proactive instead of reactive in the case of mental health for students, and we started implementing some mental health practices at young ages, some of these instances and occurrences wouldn't take place. So I would wave my magic wand and let all 3 of those things happen.
And John, sort of the same question for you. I know that you were certainly part of the National Guard, so presumably, you're not against the Second Amendment, against all guns and weapons or anything along those lines. Is there some type of desire that you want to see come out of this debate tonight with the discussion about gun violence? Some type of legislative thought from the candidates.
That's a really great question. And yes, definitely with me having military background, with me having training and experience of how to effectively carry firearms, is definitely ultimately is kind of like it's a double-edged sword, to be honest. Because like I said, at the end of the day, having a firearm at certain times can prove to be a benefit. But then in situations where we have school shootings where the shooter go and they steal their weapons from their parents, it now becomes so ultimately, like, just having like that sense of like legislation and like policy reform is definitely something that I stand strong for, because although I don't want my rights to be taken away from me to carry, I still there still needs to be something put into place as far as in situations where a weapon is given to a person and their kids or their family take that weapon from their possession and commit some type of violent act. At what point are we going to start holding the gun holder to some sort of blame? Because like a lot of times when you hear about school shootings, like I said, none of them are old enough to actually go and purchase weapons themselves. They get it from within the house. So if his dad gave him a weapon as a gift, at what point do we hold his dad accountable for the act that he partook in? And it's like I said, like it's honestly it's gonna be a very hard fight, because like I said, no matter what laws we do put into place, the weapons are going to be found in the hands of the ones who want to commit these horrible acts. But like I said, we just have to start changing the narrative. And how can we place the blame on who purchased the weapon rather than who actually did the shooting, if that makes sense?
And John, some folks, John, go further than that, because we know that the Michigan case, in the Michigan shooting, that they went after the parents and they've held them responsible and they're in prison now. But some folks, if they don't stop at the parents, maybe you need to look at the manufacturers as well, and what they should be able to tell from the weapons that they are producing in the hands that they end up with or end up in the schools that they end up in. So maybe there needs to be a relook at federal legislation. One of the things, and this is what I'd love to hear you speak to, Jacques, because now we're talking about federal legislative policy, state legislative policy. We have a training class that's coming up beginning tomorrow with several of the Gen Zs and young millennials, and they're going to be focused on legislation and focused on going back to the communities and how they can make a change based on the training that they're receiving. Can you share with us how the experience that you've had through the training has in any way impacted your activation, your political activation within the community, and your issue activation within the community, and what these students that are coming into have to look forward to?
Yeah, so definitely prior to becoming a fellow with TJC, yes, I did do a lot of work when it came to activism. But a lot of it was like, the type of work that you see on the front lines. But definitely after the transformation that I went through after the TJC class, it really shifted my focus onto looking more into the policy and looking more into the legislation. And although this isn't specifically about gun violence, one of the main things that I really like to advocate for is rights for people with disabilities. Me, myself, I suffer